The research station hung like a crystalline spider in the void between star systems, its prismatic exterior reflecting the distant pinpricks of starlight. Inside, Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved with the calculated precision of a surgeon, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that shimmered and pulsed with impossible mathematical configurations. Most researchers would have gone home hours ago. The station's chronometer read 300 hours, standard interstellar time. But Elena Rodriguez wasn't most researchers. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, strands escaping where she'd absent-mindedly tucked them behind her ears during hours of intense concentration. A half-empty nutrient pack and 3 empty caffeine capsules hold the story of her marathon research session. "AI," she murmured to her AI assistant, "run another quantum coherence simulation. But this time, introduce a 0.00003 variance in the entanglement matrix." The holographic display erupted into a symphony of quantum probability waves. Most observers would have seen nothing more than beautiful, incomprehensible chaos. But Elena saw patterns, microscopic deviations that whispered of something fundamentally wrong. Aria's holographic avatar materialized, a semi-transparent figure composed of intricate geometric patterns that shifted and reformed with each spoken word. "Dr. Rodriguez, I must inform you that this is the 247th variation of the simulation you've run in the past 36 hours. Statistical probability suggests." "Statistical probability?" Elena interrupted, a rare edge of excitement breaking through her typical analytical calm. "That's exactly the problem with how we've been approaching gateway physics. We're treating quantum systems like they're predictable, like they're a solved equation." She zoomed in on a particular section of the holographic display. What looked like a minor fluctuation, something any other researcher would dismiss as computational noise, stood out to her like a blaring alarm. The Interstellar Gateway Network was humanity's most recent marvel of adopted technology. When humans had first been invited to join the Galactic Confederation 87 years ago, the gateways had been presented as the pinnacle of scientific achievement. Instantaneous travel between star systems, powered by quantum entanglement principles that supposedly transcended the limitations of traditional physics. But Elena saw something else. A fundamental flaw so subtle that it had escaped detection by civilizations that had been studying quantum mechanics for millennia. AI. Isolate the quantum signature in Sector 7 Gamma. Compare it against the standard Confederation baseline model. The A's response was instantaneous. Probability maps overlaid each other, showing microscopic divergences that would be invisible to any traditional analysis. "Discrepancy detected," AI reported. "Variance of 0.0000047% from established quantum stability parameters." Most scientists would have ignored such a minute deviation. But Elena Rodriguez had built her career on finding the impossible in the margins of accepted understanding. She thought back to her childhood on the Mars colonies, where survival meant questioning every assumption. Her parents, terraforming engineers who had transformed a dead planet into a livable world, had taught her that innovation lived in the spaces between what was known and what was possible. "This isn't just a variance," Elena whispered, more to herself than to Araya. "This is a fundamental structural weakness in the entire gateway network." The implications were staggering. If her preliminary analysis was correct, the quantum entanglement network that allowed instantaneous travel across thousands of light years was fundamentally unstable. Not just in one location, but systematically across the entire galactic infrastructure. Aria's geometric form flickered, processing the implications. "Dr. Rodriguez, if my calculations are correct, we're looking at a potential cascading quantum failure that could destroy interstellar travel as we know it." The research chamber went silent, save for the soft hum of quantum processors and the distant pulse of station maintenance systems. Elena leaned back, her mind racing. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This was a potential extinction-level threat to galactic civilization. And no one would believe her. A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. She had faced impossible challenges before, and she was just getting started. The Grand Celestial Chamber of the Galactic Confederation was a marvel of Sen architecture, a massive spherical auditorium that seemed to defy physics itself. Holographic projections created an illusion of infinite space, with each delegation seated on floating platforms that represented their home systems. At the center, a circular dais stood ready for presentations, surrounded by concentric rings of increasingly senior scientific and political representatives. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood alone. Behind her, a small contingent of human researchers formed a silent support wall. Dr. Marcus Chen, his hands clasped tightly behind his back, watched with eyes that had seen too much. Dr. Aisha Okonkwo's dark skin seemed to shimmer with an almost imperceptible tension, her fingers occasionally tapping a complex rhythm against her datapad. Ambassador Kritak of the Zornak rose to his full height, nearly 3 meters of crystalline exoskeleton and neural fibers that pulsed with an internal bioluminescence. His species had been studying quantum mechanics for over 10,000 years, and every movement radiated contempt. Dr. Rodriguez, Kritak's voice translated through universal communication implants, each word carefully modulated to convey maximum condescension. You propose that the entire Gateway Network, a system developed and maintained by the most advanced civilizations in known space, contains a fundamental flaw. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien languages. Holographic translators worked overtime, converting dismissive laughter and incredulous comments into a universal dialogue of scientific derision. Elena stood perfectly still. Her presentation materialized around her. Complex quantum probability matrices, simulation data, and microscopic variance analyses that danced in 3-dimensional space. Each graphic represented months of meticulous research, each data point a challenge to millennia of established scientific understanding. The variance is not a theoretical construct. Elena responded, her voice cutting through the chamber's noise. It's a measurable quantum instability that exists across the entire Gateway Network. The current design creates a cascading potential for total system failure. Dr. Lyra Vex, the Confederation's lead quantum physicist, a being composed of what appeared to be living light contained within a humanoid environmental suit, leaned forward. Her voice was a melodic series of tones that translated to clinical dismissal. Impossible. Our models have been verified across 10,000 star systems. Your human research station has been operational for less than a century. Marcus Chen stepped forward, activating a secondary holographic display. The image showed a series of gateway malfunctions, small incidents that had been quietly archived and forgotten. These are documented gateway failures from the past 50 years. Each one matches the quantum signature Dr. Rodriguez has identified. The chamber went silent. Kritak's crystalline body shifted, fractal patterns of light dancing across his exoskeleton. The Zornak equivalent of a derisive sneer. Correlation is not causation, human. These are isolated incidents, not proof of a systemic failure. Elena knew this moment was crucial. She had prepared for this. Araya had run thousands of simulation scenarios, each one building a bulletproof argument. The Gateway Network, she began, her voice steady, is built on a quantum entanglement principle that assumes perfect information transfer. But quantum systems are never perfect. They're probabilistic. Each gateway introduces microscopic information loss, a loss that compounds exponentially with each transfer. She zoomed in on a particularly complex holographic model. Tiny fractal lines began to spiderweb across the projection, demonstrating how a microscopic variance could create massive systemic failure. Aisha Okonkwo spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of decades of engineering experience. We're not asking you to believe us immediately. We're asking for a comprehensive, independent review of our research. Kritak laughed, a sound like shattering glass translated through communication implants. Independent review. Your entire premise is founded on human arrogance. Humans who were barely exploring their own solar system when our civilizations were traversing galaxies. The challenge was clear. This was more than a scientific debate. This was a test of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. Elena Rodriguez met Kurtak's gaze. She saw dismissal, condescension. What the ambassador didn't see was the quiet determination that had transformed a dead planet into a living world. The same determination that would now challenge the foundations of interstellar travel. "We request a full investigation," she stated simply. "The potential consequences are too significant to ignore." The chamber buzzed with tension. Somewhere in that massive hall, the future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. The converted research station was a testament to human ingenuity, a patchwork of cutting-edge technology and improvised solutions that would have made any alien scientific committee laugh. Salvaged quantum processors sat alongside custom-built cooling systems. Holographic interfaces were jury-rigged with open-source computational matrices that broke every standard Galactic Confederation research protocol. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of controlled chaos, her team working with a synchronicity that defied traditional research methodologies. To her left, Dr. Marcus Chen manipulated a quantum resonance chamber that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and sheer determination. To her right, Dr. Aisha Okonkwo was elbow-deep in a custom-built quantum computing system, her augmented reality interface a blur of calculations and probability matrices. "RIA," Elena called out. "Initialize Quantum Entanglement Simulation Protocol HERM-7. The A's holographic form materialized, a constellation of shifting geometric patterns that seemed to breathe with computational energy. "Warning," RIA responded. "Simulation parameters exceed recommended safety protocols by 427%. Marcus looked up, a wry smile cutting across his normally serious face. "Since when have we ever followed recommended safety protocols?" The team had been working for 72 consecutive hours. Nutrient packs, caffeine supplements, and pure scientific determination were their only sustenance. Their makeshift laboratory was a fortress of last resort, a final attempt to prove a theory that could either save or destroy everything. The quantum resonance chamber began to hum, a sound that was more felt than heard. Microscopic quantum entanglement generators spun up, creating probability fields that twisted the very fabric of spatial temporal understanding. Most research teams would have used standard Confederation simulation protocols, but this team was different. Aisha's fingers flew across her interface, introducing quantum variance in Sector Gamma 9, tracking information loss across entanglement matrix. The chamber's internal environment began to shift. Holographic representations of quantum probability waves danced and collided, creating patterns that defied traditional mathematical models. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was a precisely calculated dance of quantum mechanics. "We're not just testing the gateway network," Elena murmured, more to herself than to her team. "We're reimagining how quantum information transfer works." Their approach was quintessentially human, a perfect blend of calculated risk, creative problem-solving, and absolute determination. Where alien civilizations saw immutable scientific laws, humans saw challenges to be overcome. Suddenly, the chamber's internal systems began to destabilize. Warning indicators flashed, first yellow, then deep crimson. The quantum probability waves started to collapse in on themselves, creating micro-singularities that threatened to tear apart the entire experimental setup. "Containment field failing," Marcus shouted, his hands dancing across emergency control systems. Aisha was already moving, her augmented reality interface overlaying complex stabilization algorithms, redirecting quantum flow, compensating for. A massive energy surge ripped through the laboratory. Holographic displays exploded in cascades of light and data. The quantum resonance chamber's internal systems began to overheat, pushing well beyond any safe operational parameters. Aria's voice cut through the chaos. "Dr. Rodriguez, containment protocols are failing. Recommendation is immediate system shutdown." But Elena Rodriguez didn't move. She saw something in the collapsing data, a pattern, a microscopic deviation that was more important than any safety protocol. "Hold," she commanded. The chamber was seconds away from total catastrophic failure. Quantum probability waves were breaking down. The very fabric of their experimental setup was about to tear itself apart. And then, stillness. A single line of data appeared, one microscopic piece of information that changed everything. "Got you," Elena whispered. The team looked at her, a mixture of exhaustion, fear, and wild hope etched across their faces. They knew they had just done something no other research team in galactic history would have dared to attempt. They had turned the impossible into a data point. Outside the research station, the vast emptiness of space continued its silent watch, unaware that everything was about to change. The Triangulum Andromeda Corridor was the most heavily trafficked gateway in known space, a quantum bridge that connected three major galactic sectors, supporting over 10,000 simultaneous transit routes at any given moment. Massive gateway stations the size of small moons hung in carefully calculated space-time intersections, their quantum entanglement matrices humming with the energy of countless interstellar connections. No one saw it coming. At 6:47 hours Standard Galactic Time, the first quantum cascade began. Aboard the Confederation diplomatic vessel Celestial Harmony, Captain Zora Kinra of the Luminarian species was in the middle of her standard transit report when reality itself seemed to hiccup. The ship's quantum navigation systems flickered, first a microsecond of static, then a complete system dropout. "Navigation control, report," she barked, her four iridescent eyes scanning multiple holographic displays. Silence. Then panic. Across the Triangulum Andromeda Corridor, thousands of ships suddenly found themselves suspended in absolute darkness. Quantum communication networks collapsed. Navigation systems went dark. What had been a perfectly choreographed dance of interstellar transit became a graveyard of suspended vessels. On the Confederation's primary communication hub, alarm systems erupted into a cacophony of warning signals. Holographic displays showed entire sections of the gateway network going dark, first in pinpricks, then in massive cascading failures. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the first reports come in from her research station. Her team gathered around a massive holographic display that tracked the gateway network's gradual disintegration. "It's happening," Marcus Chen whispered, his voice a mixture of scientific fascination and horror. "Exactly as we predicted. The gateway collapse wasn't a sudden destruction. It was a systematic unraveling. Quantum entanglement matrices breaking down at the microscopic level, creating a domino effect that spread faster than light itself. Thousands of ships became quantum ghosts, suspended between destinations, neither here nor there." Aisha Okonkwo's fingers flew across her interface, tracking the collapse. "The information loss is exponential," she reported. "Each gateway failure is creating additional quantum instability in adjacent systems." The Galactic Confederation's emergency channels erupted into chaos. Diplomatic vessels, commercial transit routes, military supply lines, all suspended in a moment of absolute uncertainty. Entire planetary systems found themselves suddenly isolated, cut off from critical supply routes and communication networks. On the research station, ARI's holographic form began compiling the initial data. "Quantum cascade progression matches our initial simulation with 99.7% accuracy," the AI reported. "Projected total network failure in approximately 72 standard hours if no intervention occurs." Elena Rodriguez stood perfectly still. This was no longer a theoretical problem. This was real. The first official communication from the Confederation came 3 hours after the initial collapse. Ambassador Kurtak's holographic form looked different. The usual condescension had been replaced by something closer to pure terror. "Explain," he demanded, his crystalline body flickering with barely contained panic. Elena's response was calm, clinical. "The gateway network contains a fundamental quantum instability. The collapse was inevitable. We can help you understand how to." "Help," Kurtak interrupted, Help, you've destroyed our entire transportation infrastructure. But Elena saw something the ambassador didn't. While others saw destruction, she saw an opportunity, a chance to completely reimagine how interstellar travel could work. We have a solution, she said simply. The holographic display behind her showed the cascading gateway failures, a beautiful, terrifying map of quantum destruction. Each failed gateway was a data point, each collapsed connection a piece of a puzzle that only humans seemed capable of solving. Across thousands of star systems, billions of beings suddenly found themselves suspended in an impossible moment. Ships drifted. Communications died. An entire galactic civilization hung in a moment of absolute uncertainty. And at the center of it all, a small human research team prepared to do what no one thought possible. They were going to save everyone, whether the galaxy wanted their help or not. The Confederation's Emergency Response Center was a monument to alien technological sophistication. And now, complete failure. Massive holographic displays showed the progressive gateway network collapse, each failed connection represented by a dying point of light. Thousands of the galaxy's most brilliant minds sat frozen, their millennia of scientific expertise rendered utterly useless. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team walked in like they owned the place. We need complete access to the Gateway Network's core quantum matrices, Elena announced to the stunned assembly of alien scientists and political leaders. Her tone brooked no argument, a quintessentially human approach that stopped just short of being a direct order. Dr. Marcus Chen was already setting up their custom-built quantum intervention system. It looked nothing like the sleek, uniform technology surrounding them. Their equipment was a brilliant chaos of repurposed components, jury-rigged cooling systems, and computational matrices that seemed to defy conventional design principles. Standard gateway stabilization protocols are useless, Aisha Okonkwo explained, her augmented reality interface dancing with probability calculations. You're trying to patch a system that's fundamentally broken. We're going to rebuild it from the ground up. The alien scientists watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. Dr. Lyran Vex, the Confederation's lead quantum physicist, approached Elena. Her form of living light seemed to pulse with barely contained frustration. Your proposal is madness, Ninvex translated through communication implants. You suggest completely rewriting the quantum entanglement principles that have governed interstellar travel for 10,000 years. Elena's smile was razor-sharp. Exactly. Araya, the AI assistant, began projecting their intervention strategy. What looked like chaos to the alien observers was a meticulously calculated quantum reconstruction algorithm. Marcus had developed an adaptive computational model that could predict and potentially neutralize quantum information loss at the microscopic level. We're not just stabilizing the network, Marcus explained, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. We're teaching it to heal itself. The intervention was quintessentially human, an approach that combined raw computational power with an almost organic adaptability. Where alien civilizations saw fixed scientific laws, humans saw a system to be understood, challenged, and ultimately transformed. Aisha's contribution was equally revolutionary. She had developed a quantum communication technique that didn't just transmit information, it actively anticipated and corrected potential quantum decoherence. Each transmission became a self-correcting system, learning and adapting in real time. Look, she said, pulling up a holographic representation of their new quantum communication matrix. The display showed a living, breathing computational system that seemed to pulse and adapt with each microsecond of interaction. The first test came unexpectedly. A critical gateway connecting the Orion and Carina sectors was moments away from total collapse. Traditional stabilization methods had already failed multiple times. Initiating quantum reconstruction protocol, Araya announced. The room went silent. Holographic displays showed the gateway's quantum matrix, a complex web of interconnected probability waves. Where previous attempts had been like using a hammer to fix delicate circuitry, the human team's approach was more like a living system of nanobots, actively healing and restructuring. Microsecond by microsecond, the gateway began to stabilize. Ambassador Kritak, who had been watching with barely contained skepticism, leaned forward. The crystalline patterns of his exoskeleton shifted, the Zornak equivalent of shock. "Impossible," he whispered. But it was happening. The gateway, which moments ago had been on the brink of total collapse, was not just stabilizing. It was becoming something entirely new. Elena Rodriguez looked at her team. They had done more than save a gateway. They were rewriting the fundamental principles of interstellar travel. "We're not just fixing a problem," she murmured. "We're showing them what's possible." As the first stabilized gateway flickered back to full functionality, the alien scientists watched in stunned silence. Humanity had just changed everything again. 12 hours into the gateway network collapse, the situation had become exponentially more complex. What began as a systemic failure was now a full-scale quantum catastrophe that threatened to unravel the fabric of interstellar civilization. The Confederation's Emergency Command Center had been transformed. What was once a pristine, high-tech environment now looked like a war room. Holographic displays flickering, emergency communication channels overloaded, and alien scientists working alongside the human team in a desperate race against total system failure. "We're losing the Sagittarius-Carina quantum bridge in 3 minutes," Aisha Okonkwo announced, her voice a model of professional calm despite the magnitude of the crisis. Her augmented reality interface was a blur of probability calculations and quantum stabilization protocols. Dr. Marcus Chen looked up from his custom-built quantum intervention system. "We can't keep playing defense," he said. "We need to go on the offensive." Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the controlled chaos, her mind working faster than the most advanced quantum computers in the room. The gateway network wasn't just failing, it was evolving in ways no one had predicted. Each collapsed gateway was creating cascading quantum anomalies that threatened to isolate entire star systems. "Elena," called out, "run a full-spectrum quantum coherence analysis. I want to know exactly how these collapses are propagating." The AI's holographic form materialized, a constellation of geometric patterns that seemed to breathe with computational energy. "Analysis complete," AI responded. "Quantum information loss is occurring at an exponential rate. Projected total network failure in approximately 14 standard hours." Ambassador Kritak approached, his crystalline body flickering with a combination of fear and reluctant admiration. The Zornak diplomatic corps had been forced to acknowledge that their millennia of scientific expertise had been rendered obsolete in hours. "Your solution," Kritak demanded, "must be complete. Total. Absolute." Elena's response was both a promise and a challenge. "We're not just going to stop the collapse. We're going to transform the entire quantum transportation infrastructure." The next phase of their intervention was nothing short of scientific rebellion. Marcus had developed a quantum reconstruction algorithm that was more organic than mechanical, a living computational system that could predict and neutralize quantum information loss at the microscopic level. "We're teaching the network to heal itself," Marcus explained, pulling up a holographic representation of their intervention. The display showed a complex, adaptive matrix that seemed to pulse and breathe like a living organism. Suddenly, the command center's main display erupted with a massive quantum cascade. An entire sector of gateways began to collapse simultaneously, a quantum storm that threatened to consume entire star systems. "Intervention window closing," Aisha shouted. Her fingers flew across her interface, redirecting quantum flows with a precision that seemed more intuitive than computational. Elena knew what had to be done. "I'm going in," she announced. The room went silent. To stabilize the most critical gateway collapse, someone would need to manually interface with the quantum matrix, a process that would expose them to potentially fatal levels of quantum radiation and information destabilization. Marcus started to object. Aisha's hand went to her communication implant, but Elena was already moving. "The gateway in the Orion Triangulum corridor," she said. "It's the linchpin. If we can stabilize that single point, we can create a quantum reset for the entire network." The proposed intervention was suicide by any traditional scientific standard. To manually interface with a collapsing quantum gateway would mean exposure to quantum states that could literally tear a being apart at the molecular level. But Elena Rodriguez was not traditional. And this was humanity's moment. Aria's voice cut through the tension. "Dr. Rodriguez, the probability of survival is irrelevant," Elena interrupted. As she prepared for the most dangerous scientific intervention in galactic history, the entire command center watched. Alien scientists who had dismissed humans for generations now held their breath. Somewhere between mathematical possibility and sheer human determination, a solution was about to be born. The moment Elena Rodriguez interfaced with the collapsing quantum matrix was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Her consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations, becoming pure information, a living algorithm moving through the most fundamental fabric of space-time. The quantum gateway wasn't just a transportation system. It was a living network of probabilistic connections, and she could see every microscopic flaw, every potential point of failure. Most beings would have been torn apart. Quantum radiation would have unraveled their molecular structure in milliseconds. But Elena Rodriguez was something different. Her mind, enhanced by years of research, by the unique human capacity for adaptive thinking, became a bridge between what was and what could be. In the command center, Marcus Chen and Aisha Okonkwo watched in horror and fascination. Holographic displays showed Elena's vital signs, if they could even be called that anymore. She wasn't just interfacing with the quantum matrix, she was becoming the matrix. "Aria," Marcus called out. "Quantum coherence stabilization." The A's response was instantaneous. Computational matrices that had been developed over months of intense research began to pulse and adapt. What looked like chaos to outside observers was a precisely calculated intervention. Ambassador Kurtak watched in stunned silence. The Zornak diplomatic representative, who had spent centuries dismissing human capabilities, now saw something impossible happening before his crystalline eyes. Inside the quantum matrix, Elena Rodriguez was rewriting fundamental laws of physics. The gateway network wasn't just a transportation system. It was a wounded organism, and she was performing quantum surgery at the most fundamental level. Microscopic information pathways that had been corrupted for millennia were being redesigned, reimagined, rebuilt. Aisha's voice cut through the tension. "Quantum information transfer rates increasing. We're seeing adaptive reconstruction at a cellular, no, a quantum, level." The transformation was beautiful and terrifying. Entire star systems that had been isolated began to reconnect. Quantum communication pathways that had been dead for hours suddenly sparked back to life, but not in their original form. They were becoming something new, something that defied the previous understanding of interstellar transportation. Marcus tracked the changes on his interface. "We're not just fixing the network," he whispered. "We're evolving it." 12 minutes into the intervention, the first complete quantum reset occurred. An entire sector that had been dark for hours suddenly blazed with renewed quantum coherence. But this wasn't a simple restoration. This was a fundamental reimagining of how quantum information could move across vast distances. In the command center, alien scientists from a dozen different species watched in stunned silence. Dr. Lyran Vex, the Confederation's lead quantum physicist, spoke first. Her form of living light seemed to tremble with a combination of terror and pure scientific wonder. "This is impossible," she translated through communication implants. Kurtak's response was different. The dismissive arrogance that had characterized his previous interactions was gone. "No," he said simply. "This is human." 47 minutes into the intervention, Elena Rodriguez began to reassemble herself. Her consciousness, which had spread across the quantum matrix like a living algorithm, started to coalesce back into human form. The gateway network was no longer what it had been. It was adaptive, self-healing, capable of learning and evolving in ways that no previous civilization had ever conceived. When Alina finally opened her eyes, the command center erupted. Not with cheers, not with celebration, with absolute, stunned silence. Her eyes were different, not physically, but something in them had changed. She had seen the fundamental fabric of reality, and reality had changed to accommodate her vision. "We need to talk," Alina said simply, "about the future of interstellar travel." Marcus and Aisha exchanged a look. They knew everything had changed. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of galactic civilization, and they were just getting started. 6 months after the quantum resurrection, the Galactic Confederation had been completely transformed. The Celestial Archive, the most prestigious scientific institution in known space, was preparing to unveil a monument that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display, surrounded by representatives from over 217 different species. The new quantum transportation network is more than a technological achievement, Elena explained, her voice carrying the weight of fundamental change. It's a living system of information exchange that adapts, learns, and evolves. Behind her, holographic representations showed the new gateway network, no longer a static infrastructure, but a dynamic, intelligent system that responded to the needs of galactic civilization in real time. Where previous gateway networks had been rigid, mechanical constructs, this was something entirely different. It was alive. Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward, presenting the technical details. Traditional gateway systems were based on fixed quantum entanglement principles, he explained. Our new approach treats information transfer as a dynamic, adaptive process. Each gateway is now capable of self-diagnosis, self-repair, and intelligent routing. The assembled representatives represented a cross-section of galactic civilization. The crystalline Zornak, the energy-based luminarians, silicon-based life forms, and carbon-based species, all watched with a mixture of wonder and barely contained excitement. Ambassador Kurtak, who had once been the most vocal critic of human scientific capabilities, now stood as a primary advocate for the new system. His crystalline form seemed to pulse with a different energy, one of genuine respect. "Humanity has done what no civilization thought possible," Kurtak announced. "We have not just repaired a transportation network. We have reimagined the very concept of interstellar communication." Aisha Okonkwo presented the broader implications. The new quantum network wasn't just about transportation. It was a fundamentally new way of understanding information transfer, communication, and collective knowledge. "We've transformed the gateway network into a living information ecosystem," she explained. "It learns, it adapts, it solves problems in ways we're still discovering." The presentation was more than a technical demonstration. It was a declaration of humanity's potential. Araya, the AI that had been crucial to the entire intervention, materialized as a holographic representation. The new quantum network represents a 637% improvement in information transfer efficiency, the AI reported. Potential applications extend far beyond transportation. In the audience, scientific representatives from species that had existed for tens of thousands of years looked on with a mixture of humility and excitement. Humanity, a species that had only achieved interstellar travel a century ago, had just revolutionized galactic infrastructure. Elena Rodriguez knew this was just the beginning. The quantum resurrection had been more than a technical fix. It had been a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent systems could function. The gateway network was now a living, learning entity, and humanity had been its midwife. During a private moment after the presentation, Kurtak approached Alina. The Zornak ambassador's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with a complex emotional resonance. "We were wrong about humanity," he said simply. "Completely and utterly wrong." Alina's response was characteristic. "We're just getting started." As the presentation concluded, Holographic displays showed the new quantum network, a beautiful living web of connection that spanned entire galactic sectors. Where previous networks had been mechanical, this was organic, adaptive, intelligent. The Galactic Confederation would never be the same, and humanity had made sure of that. In research stations and scientific laboratories across human colonies, a new generation of researchers looked at the quantum resurrection as more than a technical achievement. It was a testament to human potential, a reminder that innovation knows no boundaries. The Gateway Network was alive, and so was humanity's potential.